You all know the scene. The scene is the corner of Georgia and Hornby Street. The scene is a story which has been reported ad nauseam with particular effect in the city of Vancouver. Buy the big bargains you saw up there. And at long last, the three parties in the House of Commons had apparently agreed on the quick passage of a bill to clear the streets of Vancouver of that obnoxious pest, the prostitute, with her pimp in the background. The other night I drove down Georgia Street and I counted 16 hookers at the corners between Georgia Street and Burrard Street. And what happens in the House of Commons? All of a sudden, the NDP, ably led by Stu Leggett and Stanley Knowles, decide that the views of civil libertarians and women's groups, the national status of women, must be examined in committee with the police chiefs called back again before they pass this simple bill, the object of which is to remove the obstructions placed by a Supreme Court of Canada decision that soliciting to be an offence must be pressing and persistent. What the devil the NDP and Leggett are up to, I can hardly guess in any way, shape or form. Surely any women's liber, any civil libertarian or the national status of women realize that this public sale of sex by humiliated, denigrated females on the street, ably assisted by the male customers and terrorized by their pimps, is an offence that must be removed in a hypocritical but practical way from public sight. We well know that if we clear the streets, the prostitution will go elsewhere. But what Leggett and the boys don't know is that Georgia Street and other streets in Vancouver are recruiting grounds for a brand new batch of teenage hookers. If they're not on drugs when they start, and if they're not in the hands of a pimp when they start, they certainly are soon after. And I want to give a personal message to my friend Leggett, who may well one day be the leader of the NDP in British Columbia, and who is a man of some sensitivity, that even Police Chief Don Winterton realizes that cleaning the streets won't do away with prostitution. But he realizes too, as the ordinary citizen does, is that this is an offence to the city, and it allows it to spread and multiply like nobody's business. Mind you, with the leadership we get from the Minister of Justice, all Ministers of Justice, how can you expect people to understand it? Because to go back to a celebrated affair involving a very senior judge in British Columbia, at that time, the Minister of Justice says, "It is appropriate to say that having sexual relations with a prostitute is not in itself a criminal offence." Well, that may be all right for judges, but it's not all right for the man in the street who wants to see the streets clean. Today's morality is different. Permissiveness is here, like it or lump it. But I think that the taste of the public and the appearance of the streets must be protected to some degree, or you become a dirty, run-down, shabby, gutter-type city like many in the United States, or like Yonge Street in Toronto, before the pressure of public opinion finally forced them to close it down. So my message to Leggett and the boys, for goodness sake, use your common sense. All it is an effort, perhaps a fruitless effort, an effort to enable the police to charge prostitutes with simple soliciting, remove them from that place, be able to harass them legally, and put back the old franchise fee system of fines and jails. It won't wipe it out. Nobody's pretending it will, but it'll remove the scab from the face of Vancouver. Why don't you waken up, Stu? I don't expect much from Stanley Knowles, but you're from this part of the country, and you hope to be Premier of British Columbia someday. Keep going this way, and you won't even get elected in Coquitlam. Now, another sensitive subject in which I hope to be able to put the picture properly. Everyone must, I suppose, have best wishes for the reappearance of the Provincial Court Judge, Eric Bendrop, who was given leave of absence with pay since, I think, the beginning of December or thereabouts, full pay of $35,000 a year, after the Provincial Judicial Council decision that he could not be fired, and after the extremely generous treatment given to him by the provincial government. We should let the matter rest. We should wish Mr. Benrot the very best in his recovery from his alcoholism problem. But I would like the Attorney General to remember that in the coming session of the legislature, and I say this as calmly as I can, let's make quite sure that this Provincial Judicial Council statute is reshaped. And should this kind of thing be uncovered among judges again, and I am referring specifically to alcoholism, it is absolutely imperative that the Attorney General and the Cabinet retain the direct involvement to remove forever alcoholic judges from the bench. Mr. Benrot obviously deserves perhaps a second try, and he deserves some support. But don't think, Mr. Gardam, that we would ever, as the public of BC, go through the mealy-mouthed exhibition put on by the Provincial Judicial Council and stand for it. Next thing. There's been a strike up at Simon Fraser University now for 3 months. The strike of the best paid union in its field in all of British Columbia, if not in Canada. I'm talking about the Aussie strike at SFU. This is a classic example of head in the sand stubbornness by a well-paid, if not an overpaid union. And I would like to draw to the attention of the Aussie strikers a little bit of sanity and common sense. They have been attempting without success to hamper the operations at SFU. Without success, I say, because they've been on these sporadic sectional strikes. I forget what you call them offhand. Just a message to the strikers. The Board of Governors at SFU have now given the administration the authority to give the strikers a taste of their own medicine. And you can expect that the administration at SFU will very shortly be locking out sections of Aussie from time to time, from day to day. And I hope they like a taste of their own medicine. God knows the cost of so-called higher education in British Columbia is so hefty right now that there is not that much sympathy for the Aussie strikers at SFU, which doesn't, however, forbid me or ban me or prevent me from reminding you to go and see my friend in the sheep barns at UBC, and the faculty and the students at Open House today and tomorrow on the hallowed campus of the University of British Columbia. Well, what comes up next? Where's the sheet ready? Oh yes, we're going on a little donner, a new word I'm going to introduce to the Webster audience, the donner, a little walkabout, and a reportage by Brian Coxford at Hedly, British Columbia. Brian, quick. Will I set it up, or will it stand up? What'll I say? Quick.
We want that 15 seconds check or what?
A couple of weeks ago, we got a phone call. I got a phone call from Hedly about trouble in the Hedly Sports Association, and the penny dropped right away, because you'll remember 3 years ago some horrifying stories about teenagers terrorizing old people. Maybe that they were from out of town and welfare was tightened up, they left. But there was a very big effort, which Brian is going to tell you about now.
Jack, 3 years ago, the tiny hamlet of Hedly had a juvenile problem. And the headlines in the paper in those days read, "Punk youths terrorize old folks, and rock-throwing juveniles vandalize the town." So the people of the community had to do something about it. And with the help of the RCMP, they got a hold of some federal and provincial funds and built a sports complex, a rink and a ballpark. And they called it the Hedly Sports Association. Well, the juvenile problem is no longer existent in Hedly, but there's another problem. The Sports Association now has financial problems. It's all the cause of bickering among people of the community and mismanagement. This is the way it looked 3 years ago, or at least the way the newspaper headlines read about the problems in Hedly. Juvenile crime, reckless vandalism. Some of the old-timers who lived in the former mining town in the South Okanagan told accounts of keeping loaded shotguns in their cabins to protect themselves. To better explain the problem, we should first introduce our cast of characters. RCMP Constable Byron Hoover, then with Princeton, now in Kelowna Detachment. He and his colleagues saw a way to nip the juvenile problem in the bud. They encouraged the citizens of the town to go after some government money and build a facility that would keep the kids off the street. They would later boast about how good it was.
Well, I recall making my first trip to Hedly in 1975, and I could see without a doubt that something needed to be done. The youth there had little, if any, direction. The school principal was a tremendous person in doing what he could for those people, the young people. But other than that, there was really very little for them. No scouts, cubs, or guides, or brownies, or anything like that.
This is Alan Gorham. His employer had the money needed to get the building program underway. Young Canada Works and LIP funds. His department has boasted the Hedly LIP program was one of the best it's ever been involved in.
It's very hard to say. If the Hedly Club finds itself in a deficit situation now, it's the first I've heard about it, and I wish I'd been informed earlier.
And this is the project that the RCMP encouraged, LIP helped finance, and was single-handedly responsible for wiping out the juvenile problem in Hedly. An outdoor rink, changing rooms, and a ballpark. It cost in excess of $100,000. No one really knows for sure. $80,000 of that was federal and provincial money. It was built by the Hedly Sports Association, and these are the people. The former Secretary-Treasurer and President, Danny and Marge Banman, who administered the funds to build the sports facility.
Was there ever really that much of a juvenile problem here?
Not that we ever felt there was, no. It was children didn't have enough to do, that was all.
And this is Ralph McKay, who has opposed the plan since the beginning. He's the new Secretary-Treasurer of the Hedly Sports Association because no one else wanted the job. He's inherited the debts of the bankrupt organization and is convinced the RCMP used Hedly as a public relations gimmick to solve nothing.
For the amount of tax dollars that was spent, the benefit to the children in Hedly was minimal. I mean, there was just no, comparison to the large amount of money that was spent to the benefits that were received from our tax dollars.
To better understand what's going on here, we must first take a closer look at Hedly, a hamlet of about 600 people. It started as a gold mining town, one of BC's richest. $50 million in gold left the ground here. Only the ruins of the mine remain. It's a community without any economic or political base. Those who work here hold jobs in nearby mining communities. Senior citizens have chosen Hedly as a retirement area. Single families have found it easy to collect welfare in a town without industry, and hippies find it pleasing to live here. The town has no less than 8 service groups, and the people can't seem to get along.
It's a community without a municipal organization and a community of personalities which surface, and without central leadership, these personalities clash with each other. have a difficult time agreeing on what to do and how to go about it.
There is a certain element in this town that derive benefits by keeping everybody separate and fighting with each other. Divided, they can conquer. If we unite, then they have a harder time trying to knuckle us under.
This was originally hopes also that when this project was started, it would bring the people in town closer together and make them get along better together. Unfortunately, it seems to be pulling further apart all the time once again.
It's kind of like shades of the Hatfields and McCoys. The money to get the project underway came from the federal and provincial grants, about $80,000 split two ways. And there was local money. $7,000 went into the paying of the turf for the ballpark that's complete with an underground sprinkler system.
The funding formula is based on work weeks, and a better part of the money goes towards wages. There's a very small amount. Actually, when you take your fixed costs away from the amount we do allot to two other cost factors, you're only getting about $15 per person per week that goes into other cost monies.
I was not a committee member. I was not responsible for making any decisions and had nothing to do with the economics of it or the administration of monies.
The fact of the matter is that the Hedly Sports Association's books didn't balance, not through any fault of its own, but thanks to the late arrival of provincial grant money, checks bounced, and the bank also didn't help matters.
They transferred from the sports club to cover the Young Canada Works project, and then they transferred from the Young Canada Works project back to the sports club, and therefore while the transferring of money was being done to cover from one to the other, we weren't aware of it, and we wrote checks to try and pay the bills, and the funds were not there.
In this, on the check stub, for check number 95, for $80, in this one without anything else being filled in, no name or
No name on the receipt.
no name, no nothing, just check number 95, $80. You go to check mark number 95, it's made out for $80 to one person. You go into the ledger with the same check number, the same date, and it's got $80, but for a different person.
Are you suggesting, Ralph, that there's any kind of, wrongdoing, something illegal that's happened with these books?
I'm just saying they should have had more supervision, and they should have had a better accounting of the large amount of money that they went through.
This check for $400 was supposed to be the prize money for the winner of a Hedley hockey tournament. It bounced. And these are the leftover unpaid bills for the mismanagement of the club financial affairs. They amount to $7,000. And who's going to pay for the interest on a loan the club had to take out?
We had charged up things with the understanding the grant would be available to us, money, and the interest built up on the bills, and we ended up that we had to go to the credit union to take a loan out to pay these bills which were outstanding because the people were becoming very impatient because they'd waited a long time for their money.
They got to a position where the local people in town wouldn't support them with donations anymore.
There's really nobody that they can turn to if a mistake is made. They haven't got anybody to blame. They have to assume responsibility themselves.
The Hedley Sports Complex was completed and has functioned despite the fact that it's in debt. It's a measure of success outside the community, but according to the people in the community, all it's done is keep the adults further apart.
I think the time has come that there's going to have to be a complete outsider take it and run it on a different, where there's nobody has any opinion other than maybe somebody provincially running it, or an appointed person by the provincial government to run it. I can't see it because the people in town can't seem to get along to run it.
So in the beginning, you had a problem with juveniles, kids, but really the whole thing is a bunch of adults acting like kids, isn't it?
I think it was originally.
They continue to need help. But in the meanwhile, they'll have to somehow work on the internal problem of getting along with each other.
Well, I can give you one good example about people trying to get together, and that is China and the United States. They got together.
This isn't China and the United States, this is Hedley.
I'm giving you an example, a big example of humanity. China and the United States got together to go to war. If we get together,
You could maybe be friends.
you could be friends, but there's just, everybody has lived in this town too long, really, to be friends. They know, I mean, there's just, the past keeps coming up, keeps coming up.
What's the occasion tonight?
Derek Cochran's leaving.
Where's he going? Trolling industry, salmon fishing industry at large. From an unexpected quarter as far as I'm concerned. I've been interviewing fisheries ministers, I've been interviewing the union people, PT.
This is setting up the trawlers, right? How long do you want, Jack, we can come to the
And they're very anxious for me to make it clear that they're speaking as
coming to him now? Is there a
independent trawlermen for themselves.
How long do you want to take for a Jack?
What do you want?
10, 9,
I'll give you
8,
30 seconds.
6, in 5. Put your sticker right on. 4, 3.
As you know, yesterday morning I had on the air Romeo LeBlanc, Minister of Fisheries, and Wally Johnson, the regional director or director general of this region. And when two trawlermen drive all the way from Alberni to see me, steaming mad, I want them to have their say. Yesterday you had Johnson's answer to their allegations. This morning, in reverse order because of the timing, I'm going to talk to these two trawlermen, Ian, Adam, and Fred Chidley. Ian, Adam, and Fred Chidley. And this is how the conversation we had before I spoke to the minister.
We are part of. They deliver all their catches into the small coastal towns. And if the fisheries keeps going on the way it's going and allocating fish to the bigger enterprises, then the small boats are going to be wiped out.
Well, you have a suspicion that the big operators and the seiners and the companies are all sleeping with the Fisheries Department and you're getting the empty hook. Is that right?
Yeah. In last year, in the sockeye fishery, the seine boats, which comprise 8.4% of the salmon fleet, received 75% of all the sockeye. And that was the fisheries, for no apparent reason, shut down the sockeye fishery.
For you people?
For the trawlers on the west coast.
This may be a little bit of history, but it's the first time I've heard the story, Ivan. And give me your version of what happened after you'd been fishing for a short period for sockeye with your hook and line stuff on the west coast.
All right. We were off Winter Harbor and come into the dock that evening and tied up, and suddenly I was told on the wharf that the sockeye was closed. The fishing period was closed. On
August
the west
18th.
August 12th.
1978.
That's right. The fishing was closed, period, on the west coast of Vancouver Island.
How long had you been fishing?
Well, since August or April 15th is when it started, but the sockeye had shown up for 2 weeks, and we were fishing them for 2 weeks.
How were you doing?
I was doing fine.
Really,
I was
really
making
good.
I was making my season, because up until that point I hadn't caught hardly any coho at all. They just weren't around.
Okay, on August the 12th they move in and they say, stop fishing. Well, isn't that normal
Well,
conservation practice?
Well, not the way we look at it. They said it was for conservation purposes because the fish were stalled off the west coast, or at least off Winter Harbor area, and we said no because of the communication systems we have amongst the trawler fleet. We knew there was fish that ranged from Estevan Point up to Cape Scott anyways, and they went from 20 fathoms to 100 fathoms, 200 fathoms out, and everybody was doing fine. And with a hook style of fishing, you're only catching the hungry fish, therefore.
Okay, but surely you would accept the fact that all the wiseacres and the experts and biologists in the Fisheries Department say sockeye is closed. You got to accept that.
Well, you have to be convinced, and they weren't. We accepted it as much as we could until we could get to speak to them. We never went out the next day, most
Well, no,
certainly.
tell me that. When they gave that order to close the fisheries on August the 12th, what way would that order come to you? From The Tanu or the Howie or what?
Well, apparently the TANU had put it out on the air on the general band, Channel 77 VHF. So we called them back for clarification on this.
What time was this on the Friday?
Oh, I guess it must have been around 4 o'clock sometime.
Did you ever get through to the Tanu?
Could not get them, not on the emergency frequencies, not on the general coverage frequencies, on VHF, on long-range radio telephone, made no difference. Tried the Howie, same thing, the Gull Rock, same thing. No answer from the Fisheries Department.
So here was a bunch of trawlermen who'd been ordered off the seas, very angry because you couldn't even get in touch with the people who'd given the order.
That's right. We had to go through Bull Harbor. Had to phone Bull Harbor. Bull Harbor would then phone the TANU. They couldn't turn down the DOT, so they answered them.
And then they told you it's closed.
They said it was closed.
What happened that made you suspicious, though, after that, of this particular action? You're closed on the west coast for hook and line fishing from trawlers. Then what happened?
Well, the fisheries opened it up for the seiners and the gill netters on the inside. They got, well, the first day that they fished, they got more fish than we got in the preceding 2 weeks.
Just a minute. You're closed on the outside. That's the west coast.
Yeah.
They opened it in Johnson Straits on the inside.
Right.
That's the east coast of Vancouver Island.
Yeah.
They told you they were closing for conservation, though. Why did they open it on the inside for the seiners?
They flew up there, and we asked them. We said, "Are you closing it for conservation?" And they said, "Yes." We say, "Well, there's lots of fish out there." And he says, "Well, we're going to open it up on the inside for the seine fleet." We said, "Well, if it's for conservation, how come you're opening it up on the inside?" He says, "Well, we have to give them a chance." So he said, "All right, then it's allocation. It's gear allocation." And he said, "If you want to call it that, okay."
Now, if I understand the situation, and correct me if I'm wrong, the anticipated run of sockeye at that particular time, which were Fraser River salmon?
Yes.
The Adams River.
Adams.
The
They were
large
Fraser
bulk
River fish.
Yeah.
Fraser River fish was for somewhat, 3-point-some million fish.
3.4.
3.4 million fish.
Yes.
You were closed off for what you were told was conservation.
At
Well,
600,000.
The
Yeah,
bi-
600,000.
Yeah, the biologists, like they had originally predicted 3.4 million, and then the biologist spoke to a group of fishermen in Ucluelet, and he said that they were only going to be 3.1 million. They had dropped it, and we were supposed to be cut off at about 600,000.
That's to leave 2 million fish for escapement.
That's right.
Yes.
But suddenly they opened it up for the net fleet on the inside. The escapement is no longer important. It becomes secondary then.
How much did they catch in the way of, is it sockeye or salmon and all on the
Well,
inside?
in the end,
Sockeye.
the run came in at over 9 million fish, and the trawler got roughly 950,000, the gill netter got roughly 850,000, and the seiners got 5.3 million fish.
5.3 million fish at $20 a fish, roughly.
Yeah, that's $100,000.
$100 million.
100 million, pardon me.
So when you were
$100
closed for conservation on the west coast, the seiners were open to help themselves on the inside passage.
Yes.
Seemed that way.
That's what really upsets you, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, is it not a fact that seiners are the efficient way to catch fish?
They most certainly are, and therefore they're the efficient way of doing damage.
Yeah, now...
Efficiency is not the point here. We have a given resource. We can certainly catch the trawlers, I'm sure, and most gear types could do a lot of damage if things were let loose. But the point is
You're telling me, and I'll put it bluntly to both of you, that you feel there is some kind of, shall I say, conspiracy, but there's something very unfortunate happening whereby the big packing companies on the coast here, when you get closed for conservation, they get open to help themselves in the inside passage. Is that right?
seems that way, yes.
Well,
Has this happened before?
No, it's like when we were shut down last summer, that was the first time we'd ever been shut down on the high seas.
And you're still mad about it?
Yes, I'm really mad about it.
You think it's going to happen again this year?
Well, this is funny because this is a big run this year. They're predicting the biggest run of pinks ever next year, or this year coming right now, and they're talking about shutting us down.
You don't understand it?
Well, no.
Hold your breath and we'll do another little segment with Frank Chidley from Alberta. You've been fishing since you were 6.
Yes.
Now that was their charge, and a very serious charge it is indeed. So what we did yesterday, and I'm going to just show you 2.5, 3 minutes of it, we brought Wally Johnson, the Director General, with Romeo LeBlanc, onto the set to answer the charges of the little guys, the small men in the fishing industry, who are speaking for a little informal group they've got called Trawlers for Integrity. So remember what Adam and Chidley said. And then I asked the other guy, the trawlermen accuse you of ineptitude or even worse in the Fisheries Department. And he replies,
we and the International Salmon Commission were predicting a lower than expected amount of sockeye coming in.
3.4 million.
3.4 million. And, you know, the trollers are outside. They're out where they get the first crack at the fish.
Hook and line.
Right. But, you know, the previous year, they got the first crack at the pink salmon, and they caught as many pink salmon as the whole net fleet in combination. So here was a real problem and concern. You know, sockeye is the traditional species caught by net fishermen, seiners and gill netters. It's been the heart of their income for years. And it was only in the about 1974 when trollers first found a method where they could catch sockeye salmon. But they're out there and get the first crack at them. Well, you know, we have a lot of customers to try and please. We can't say that the man out on the line getting the first crack can take them all. And that was a simple matter. They had been catching quite a number of sockeye. The prediction was still that there were going to be a rather small number, so we closed the fishery.
But then you opened it on the inside for the seiners.
When the fish really started showing up, and a lot of the fish last year came around the north end of Vancouver Island, and then they started showing in much greater numbers. So we opened to the seiners, yes. And we opened again to the trollers as well.
So what was really the problem there you had was that your biologists' estimate of the amount of fish in that sockeye, Fraser sockeye run was not 3.4, finished up at many more millions.
Yes.
Because the seiners picked up 5,300,000 fish, as I see the figures.
Right, and you know, I mean, our estimates are just estimates until the fish show up. You know, the proof's in the pudding once they're there.
See, I think what their problem is, the trollermen, and I really admire these guys, is that they saw 3 million fish coming, they took their 600,000. And then when it got around to the seiners, your estimate was wrong. And there was much more in the way of salmon to be caught. So they therefore felt that it was really a conspiracy on the part of the department to give it to the big multinationals with the seiners. How would you respond to that?
Well, you know, hindsight is great. If we had known there were that many fish, it wouldn't have been necessary to close the trawler.
You'd have left it open.
We'd have left it open, yes.
Oh.
And, you know, I wonder, Jack, you're talking about the multinational seiners. You know, 90% of the seine boats on this coast are owned by individual fishermen.
All banked, mortgaged to the big companies, many of them, aren't they? There's 8% of the fleet are seiners, right? Am I right on that? 8%? I'm not so good in figures as I should.
Well, yeah, roughly 8% of the number of boats, yes.
Anyway, on that particular occasion, they felt you'd pulled the dirty by closing it at 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, and they had the most awful job to try and get hold of any of your people. Finally got them through Bull Harbor Radio to find out what was happening, because their complaint was, is it conservation or is it allocation? And they got a couple of different answers. So it was really first conservation, and then allocation.
Yes, indeed.
And you let them come round, but of course they can't always get round the inside to get their share. Will it happen again?
Well, you know, who am I to say nothing will ever happen again?
And who is he to say that? But you see, I think we got some satisfaction for the West Coast trawlermen there. First, it was conservation. They only thought there was 3.4 million fish in that run. Then when they counted them round the corner in Johnson Strait, it was 5.3 left over, or more than that, as a matter of fact, because gill netters got another 800,000 or something. So the boys were right. They were told conservation, and it may have been conservation momentarily, but when they got round into Johnson Strait, it was allocation for the seiners, who caught 5,300,000 salmon at $20 a head. You can understand well why the little guys. But I think the lesson to be learned by the Fisheries Department is that when they make a closure on the West Coast, for goodness sake, have communications open so that the fishermen can get in touch with the Tanu or the Howie or the officials in Vancouver and get a real logical, reasoned explanation to know what's going on. So that's that out of the way. That was done for the record this morning, and also to let the West Coast trawlermen see that if they can't get to the officials themselves on a big story, I'll try and get to the officials and the minister on their behalf. Next, and I'm not going to make any snide cracks about it this time, I was very pleased with the job that the producer Les, what was his name, Fred? Harris. Henry Champ and the crew did on the little profile they did on the Webster show. Nice to be recognized by the Eastern Media Mafia. I said no snide cracks. Next, I just can't resist them. Next, we're going to replay without interruption about 13 minutes of the Webster Show on W5.
On and off for the last 15 years, people in British Columbia have heard the Scottish growl of Jack Webster shouting down all opposition on his hotline radio shows. But since October, they've been able to see his craggy face as well, as he lives up to his nicknames, Old Supermouth, Motormouth, and the Oatmeal Savage. BCTV carries a morning show starring the 60-year-old scourge of politicians and fuzzy thinkers, and that show is sweeping the breakfast ratings. Webster is said to have an ego as big as a bagpipe, so his show is, of course, called Webster.
I might have been Harvey Kirk. I could never have been Lloyd Robertson, but I might have been Harvey Kirk. Thank God I didn't do it.
Why was that? They didn't pay you enough money?
Yeah, I'd have to live in the East with the mafia.
Are you here, Jack? I just weren't here.
Shirley.
Will you tell me why you've been here 50 years and haven't lost your Scottish accent yet?
I'd like to complain about the Webster Show. It's ruining my morning. I don't get anything done anymore. It's definitely the best show you have going. That's my own piece of personal public relations.
I find him a cross between Archie Bunker and my father. Which means that I'm deeply in love with him. Which means that I really want his body.
Haggis Basher, loudmouth, radio idiot.
Webster is always the hard-scrabble newsman, the man who started as a copy boy at 15 in Glasgow and rose through the ranks. He got off the boat when he was edging 30 and rammed his way into the Vancouver Sun office to ask managing editor Hal Strait for a job.
I realized he had some talent, so I hired him. I think the sum that time was $45 a week, which is about $10 more than anybody else got, and about 13 more than he's worth.
Simplest thing, there's nothing much to it. Nothing to sing, just doodly do it. I love it, says, wherever I go, I doodly do.
There is a personal side to Webster. He's here with his son, but it's a side that he fights to keep intensely private.
$10 a seat. Do I have much of a social life? Nah, you wouldn't call it social life. If I'm out socially, I'm working. Except for the golf, a little bit of racquetball, working at the farm, the odd hockey game.
He also has two daughters. We'll catch a glimpse of one of them, but we didn't meet his wife. Webster likes to control his plays and to stay on home ground. He doesn't like to go away for long in fear that he'll miss something in BC.
What was the last game like?
Very good. It was very exciting. Yeah.
You don't have to lie to me.
It's 6:30 a.m. and Webster is arriving at BCTV, not at a special television studio, but at the newsroom.
Good morning.
Webster insisted that he do his show from the middle of the action. He is one of the few reporters in this country who actually makes news as well as collects it.
Our own personalized coffee cups. See? See? Cheers.
Big improvement, but you'll never see this kind of program nationally on W5. One, you're in the wrong part of the country, and two, it's nighttime. I work mornings. And this morning we're going to have a good, fast show. Be a good program. You don't have this kind of program in the East. Nobody gets up early enough. Besides, you never leave Toronto.
One other strike. The famous Jack Webster 1-2 punch of news sense and showmanship has sparked a revolution in local television.
Well, somebody got something right, didn't they? Nate, how are you this morning? I listened to
Webster moved from radio because he thought radio was too tough at his age. A close friend died of a heart attack in his arms, and that convinced him he ought to take life easier. He was trading 4 hours of radio for 90 minutes of television's competition.
The day before I went on the air at the beginning of October, I was paranoid with fear. Morning television, my God. Up against Donahue and religious programs and Sesame Street and cartoons. And also the fear, although I had been on television many times over the past 25 years. I had never before been in television. And suddenly I'm faced, you know, as a one-man band, more or less. What am I going to do? I can't just open the phones on a bad morning as I did on radio and say, well, here I am. Social credit are a bunch of finks. The NDP are disasters. Trudeau should be thrown out. Joe Clark's no good. Tell me what you think about it. That you could do on radio. On a bad morning, when your guest didn't show, you could go on and, as I say, flannel. The day before I went on television, I thought, Webster, you have blown it.
You've had nothing but success lately, right? You've gone from what?
From 2,300 viewers to 100,000 viewers. In morning television, from 9 a.m. till 10:30, because it's live and real and a little bit cheeky. And if somebody makes a fool of me like you do, I'll swallow my pride and use it.
You'll go up to 500,000.
So you can do it right here, AJ? Yeah.
Webster's killing the competition with his reports, but his show is now up to 90 minutes and Webster is still moving fast. He has lost 50 pounds and presumably cut down on the half bottle of scotch a day he was drinking, but reformed, never.
I'm not smoking, though. Not smoking on camera. Give me a 10-second cue to throw it away. One thing I've done for the name guy in communications on the West Coast, and I'm talking about radio and television, is I've made the people who hire us realize that they've got to pay us properly, because without us, they're dead. We're the people who get the audience. Are you telling me that with the government's knowledge... Oh, I'm smoking in the shot. Oh, dear, oh, dear, oh, dear, oh, dear. No. But I'm stuck with it. I'm stuck with it. Okay, we'll use a freeze frame off the top and put it up there.
You go in the morning, everything you do is off the top of your head. You just walk in.
What do you mean everything I do is off the top of my head? I've been a reporter in British Columbia for 31 years. I've spent 31 hard years. I've covered every major event that has happened in these 31 years in British Columbia. I've worked night and day. Okay, the lineup's going to be, we'll open with, what'll I open? If I'm going to be reading something, I'm going to open here.
Yeah.
No, I think I'll, what do you think? We decide to line up 2 minutes before we go on the air.
And change it 2 minutes after you're on air.
And change it in the middle of the program.
Well, how does it all succeed?
Because it's news. It's fast moving. I find that I can still use my own personality. I always was a ham. Don't think this performance this morning is Webster's obituary. It is not. Although what with the stories in the paper, you begin to wonder if you've already gone.
What makes Webster popular is his style in the ring, and his ring is the microphone. On both radio and TV, he can throw a punch.
You're in my ring. You'll do as I tell you, right? Well, I'll respect that, but I'm just getting hot. I'm the world's greatest fighter, the world's prettiest fighter.
Off air, Webster is a clam on practically any other subject other than Webster. He won't even say whether he misses the life on radio that he left last September.
And for the last time on radio, 16 years, 3.5 hours a day, 44 weeks a year, and 9 years before that, for the last time, next, the news.
30 seconds to air. 30 seconds to air.
Well, Webster's he's an opportunist. He knows how to touch the emotions of the public, as he's proved in radio and now on TV. I think at heart he's a persecutor. He likes to upset people.
15 seconds to air. That's it. Thank you, Jack.
He had great success in uncovering some scandal, and he always will.
10, 9, 8.
I'm not nearly as aggressive on television as I was on radio. I'm enjoying it thoroughly, I've got to tell you. I haven't laughed so much, as we say in Scotland, since Granny died.
2, 1, air.
On his show, most people will talk to Webster about almost anything. Prime Minister Trudeau has been raked by Webster, but he sent him a telegram on Webster's 60th birthday saying, "You don't have to be likable to be popular."
Good morning. I've got to explain my throat to you this morning. It's not...
He's an asset to the community. He's one of the last places you can go for somebody to champion your cause. Sometimes it has to suit his cause, but still that's better than nothing.
You got to remember, it's a tough situation for Dave O'Connor's to take. What I found in television is the clout is tenfold. It really is quite frightening. And if they don't play the game, they can suffer social and economic consequences. Okay, when are we ready to go?
Rolling.
Chief Constable Smith, do you accept what seems to me very valid criticism that your police force didn't do a...
Clout aside, Webster is a very good interviewer. He probes, and somehow his subject sits still for it.
That woman is a police staff sergeant's daughter in your force. Right. She did not appear at the inquest.
Your delivery, your performance. There are a lot of people who would look at your show and say, this man isn't a newsman. What he is a showman. He's a performer.
That's garbage. What you're saying is garbage. If anyone has depth in the understanding of especially provincial politics and federal politics, too, I've got it. And I feel I've been around long enough to mix but try and separate fact and opinion. He was wrong in not naming them.
I want to be Jack Webster for a minute, just to see how you react to that kind of interview. Jack, how much do you make?
Mind your own business.
I've got a right to know, because you're a public figure.
I am the highest paid reporter in the country.
How many dollars?
I run a company in which I pay out a lot of expenses.
But how much money,
I'm not going to tell you.
I've got a right to know.
I make 6 figures gross.
Well, why are you embarrassed to tell me exactly what it is?
Because I don't want a lot of people to think that loudmouth, fat-faced Scotch fellow who's never lost his accent gets far too much money for his effort. We've got some of the Eastern Media Mafia in the studio this morning from a program largely unknown in the West called W5. I'll let you know if and when we allow them to put any of the Webster show on W5. I'll be back tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. precisely. Another day, another dollar.
And most of those dollars go here, into his farm on Salt Spring Island. I think you'd like to have people believe that you eat your young for breakfast, you go out and cut down 9 trees and beat up on your grandmother. You really would like people to believe that you're a tough old hard-nosed, wouldn't you?
Go on, Gil.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Don't be shy.
And you're not really, are you?
Marshmallow. All the way.
Go on, Gil.
Come on, chickens.
Are you finding people in television understand the news business as well as you thought?
Don't ask me
Jack,
to bite the hand that feeds
no,
me.
but it must, I mean, as a general rule, are they up to the standard you thought they might be? Or?
Well, they're up to the standard I thought they might be.
It's on this island with his daughter Linda that Webster takes a break and dreams of writing a book called BS is My Business.
You know, I'm not a monk, but this is the retreat. You know, I'm not exactly physically perfect, but I get lots of exercise here.
But it keeps you going, and building a barn.
That's right, building a barn and throwing bales of hay around and wrestling with sheep on occasion. Ooh, you bit me. Teeth are about as good as mine. I don't think I could ever live here full time. Maybe half the week, you know?
Right.
Half the week.
And looking forward to the 4 months you've got every year to come out here.
Yeah. Thank goodness. What a relief. You know, Mr. Webster, I got a problem. They got a problem. I got a problem. My problem's to keep my sanity. But I've been doing this talk business as a reporter and whatnot. 16 and a half years in radio, 31 years as a reporter in Vancouver. Here I am at 60, 61, starting what looks like a new career. I need my head read.
Yeah.
But it's great fun. You know, if nobody knew me, I'd die. Let's face it.
You know who you remind me of?
Don't tell me.
A cross between Archie Bunker and my father.
If you had said...
I have this feeling.
If you had said, that's mine. Thank you.
You bring out the most extraordinarily maternal instincts in me. I really could just come right over there on your lap and tell you all the things there are to make you happy.
That's enough.
Enjoying the time?
Don't have to sing, just doodly do it. I love it so. Wherever I go, W5 and you. It's been fun.
And he will probably bring Brian in.
I'll see. We'll see how the phones come up. You can
Do the
promo...
segment very short. Do this segment very short, Jack, and then promo phones.
What do you mean, how short they want it?
How short do you want it? 3 minutes? Do the letters and then send us the break.
Okay.
Okay, will do.
Yeah, I better get some makeup on.
Put some makeup on, Brian, in case you want to hear. Get some stuff on his guy. Put a little bit of how would a guy like, you know, make him look young. 30 seconds coming to use, yeah.
Were you last night? Well, as you can see, it's Friday morning this morning, and decided just to use that for a laugh, and so I could have a good look at it myself. Letters. We got letters, somebody once said in a song, and I'm not going to bore you with a lot of letters this morning, but there are one or two that I want you to see. They're not terribly important, but you might find them interesting. And the first one, this is an interesting one. It's from Sycamus. It's about the Varhog case. Dear Sir, the Sycamus branch of the Women's Institute wish to thank you for bringing to the attention of the public the case of Nancy Mae Varhog of Delta, who was killed December 31st, 1977. This was certainly a case of miscarriage of justice, and you did well to expose it. Your program is most interesting and informative. Keep up the good work. We're not finished with that particular topic yet, as you may recall. Here's a general letter with which I happen to agree. It's from the city of Vancouver, and it's about one of my pet hates. And my pet hates include this incredible denigration of the nation into becoming a banana republic and lotteries. How about looking into the biggest swindle ever to be foisted on a stupid, gullible public? I'm referring to this lottery business. When we used to buy the old Irish sweepstake tickets, there was a stub on the end that went into the big drum. And then a nurse or someone drew out the required number of numbers. If there were 12 prizes, you knew there would be 12 winners. But not anymore with this outfit. They just sell tickets all over the place, no stubs, draw a few numbers out from a computer. No wonder they have so much money left over each time, because no one is or can win. How about doing some delving into this? The same goes for the Lotto Canada racket designed by Walter Langdon. Walter, I'm inclined to agree with you. I'll tell you, I don't like these computer-run lotteries at all. The next one is a little bit of criticism, which I get from time to time. Dear Sir, please permit me the satisfaction of saying you're an obdurate, that's a good word, I like this fellow, an obdurate old man. I'm obdurate, but I'm not that old. No principles other than your own opinions, and are somebody who is in reality nothing. You don't agree with callers, so you cut them short. You have your own way at all times, even though your rehearsed programs are a joke. My rehearsed programs? Wonder if he thinks we sit here and I have somebody in and say, I'm going to say this to you, and you're going to say this to me. You know, that's really very stupid. You've only got to watch the show to know that nothing is rehearsed. I never use a script except for letters. We ad-lib it, hopefully after some preparation, but no rehearsal. Well, I've been running long on my segments this morning, so what are we going to do now, with your indulgence, is I'm going to go to a free-for-all. We haven't had one all week, in fact for 2 weeks. A free-for-all at the usual phone numbers after this commercial interruption. Parksville. Well, free-for-all. From Parksville, go ahead, please.
Yes.
Morning.
Good morning, Jack. There's one thing they forgot to tell you yesterday on this fish program.
Yeah?
They instituted a legal limit for trawlers inside the Gulf. It's coming through this year, by what the fisheries tell me, of 26 inches.
26, yes. 18 for sport fishing, possibly, and 26 for trawlers.
Right. Now, I'm a trawler. And last year, 7/10 of my fish were from 4 to 7 and 8 pounds.
Is that a firm decision yet?
No, but the fisheries, I phoned them in Nanaimo yesterday, and they told me that it'll be through this year.
That'll just about ruin you.
It will ruin a lot of us. We don't know what to do. It'll ruin us.
Well, are you a member of the union?
No, I'm not. I run a small boat. I've only got a 26-foot boat. I took in $12,000 last year, and $3,000 was from fish under 8 pounds. I'm in favor of putting it down to 22 inches, something like that. It's 19.5 inches for us now.
Uh-huh.
I'm in favor of 3 to 4 pounds. I don't mind throwing them back, but when you start throwing back 7-pound fish, you just might as well quit.
Do you have to? Or will you have to?
If it's 20...
But won't they a trawler caught fish with a hook, won't it die anyway?
Sure, a lot of them will. But a 24-inch fish, I weighed one yesterday, was 7 pounds. That's 24 inches.
And they want to bring it down to...
It's going to be 26.
I'll tell you what I'll do on that. When does your salmon season open?
Middle of April, 1st of May.
We'll put it on the list to check with Wally Johnson. If you'll nag me some other time, I'll put it on my list and check it. But I was pleased with these two guys from Albany. It's nice to see a couple of young fellas speak out, isn't it?
Oh, they were wonderful.
That was why, even though they were out of order, I decided to put them on this morning again with Johnson's explanation. Okay, I won't forget it. Much obliged. 1303. Swantula, go ahead, please.
Oh, Mr. Webster, this is Jim Lyon. I'm a bee fisherman, and I have been told that I can fish for another 5 years, but that's all. They've taken privileges away from me now. I can't sell the boat, and if I don't fish for a certain period, I lose the license to go down to sea.
You knew this when you got the bee license, didn't you?
No, I didn't.
Was it not a 10-year limitation on the bee license?
Mr. Webster, I was given the bee license under a misrepresentation. I didn't ask for it. They told me I didn't catch enough fish, and before we got the bee license, they told us too many fish were being caught. The whole thing was a misrepresentation.
And you can now appeal that depending on your catch over the past number of years, can you?
Sir, I have appealed it several times. The last time I have appealed that to Mr. LeBlanc, just before your program come on, I was told that I was going to lose my bee license because I don't know why.
Well, I mean, you look at the overall fishery problem and you believe the biologists or you believe LeBlanc's people that say too many boats chasing too few fish. They're trying to find a way to cut it down. They don't seem to have found any satisfactory way to edge people out of the fishing industry.
Sir, I have this further thing to say. The trolling fishermen get 2.5 times more for their fish than any other department.
Are you trolling or gill netting?
Trolling. The trolling fish are better fish.
The better fish. Look, thanks. Nothing I can do about it at the moment, but I'll watch for the recommended license changes that LeBlanc was talking about yesterday. You're the first time I've ever had a call from Swantula, by the way.
I'd like to get in touch with you later on, sir.
Drop me a letter that I can read, please, or give me a call off the air sometime. Go ahead, please.
Hello, Mr. Webster.
Yes, yes.
I've got 2 points I want to put across to you, and I'll make them as fast and as blunt as possible. One is the Hedly case. I don't blame society for not donating any further money to the complex, because I don't see as to why these young fellas can't get out and do some type of work for the community, such as raking leaves, washing windows, or something to help to provide some money on some causes for the project that was put up for them. And then if the people want to donate further money because of showing some initiative towards themselves and plus for the community, then I'd say by all means. The second one is to do with the prostitution problem of Vancouver. I don't agree with juvenile prostitution. I think it should be taken off the streets. I don't believe that the people, when coming here on visit, should be harassed.
Yeah.
But I do say we should not take prostitution completely out. I think that it is a help towards rape. I'm not saying like it's a definite situation, but I think it is a help towards the stoppage of rape in Vancouver.
Thank you, sir. I disagree with you.
Okay.
Brian, on the Hedley thing, some of that money came from a total of 80,000.
Total, yeah, just a little shy of 80,000.
Most of it came from Young Canada Works and from LIP.
Yeah, Young Canada Works was actually the smaller portion. LIP was the bigger chunk of the federal funds, and then there was about 40,000 of provincial funds.
Yeah, and the local people did raise money with fetes and events, and did they not?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Well, you know, on the face of it, something was built up there.
Yeah,
which has been quite useful.
And they pitched in, and the whole thing is they've got a perfectly good facility there. If they could stop arguing amongst themselves and get...
And somebody's going to have to raise the money to pay the unpaid bills.
Yeah. Or, you know, maybe lottery money, eh?
Maybe a special application to what's his name?
Mm-hmm.
Curtis.
Mm-hmm.
He never did send me my 250,000 for my tiny hovercraft to get back and forward to Salt Spring.
Well, it sometimes takes a month to 6 weeks to get the paperwork done.
Damn, I wish I was a member of a social credit constituency association. But who knows? Anyway, by and large, the facilities look quite good, are they?
On the surface, I think you probably say, you know, for 100,000 or more than 100,000, you know, what have we got?
What have we got?
But they got an underground sprinkler system too, which cost a few dollars, and
probably unnecessary. Oh, maybe it is. I don't know.
Well, I heard one person say, and I guess it's the age we live in, you know, who wants to go up and water it? So they got a...
In other words, we must have an underground sprinkler system.
That's right.
That might well have been a waste of money when they could hose the damn thing.
Yeah.
Or put a surface sprinkler system on.
But the way they argue up there, who's going to go up and water it?
Tell me, did the problem of harassing the old people disappear?
Apparently so, yeah.
Was it local kids?
Well, according to some people there, they say that the juveniles were really 21, 22, 23-year-olds.
On welfare?
Yeah, who left town anyway.
When they were tightened up on the welfare payments.
But then that's not what the police say, you know, so you've got two different opinions.
Maybe your very pacifying presence there will bring about a new era of cooperation and amity in Hedly Sports Association.
It'd be nice if they shook hands and settled their differences on the skating rink.
Thanks, Brian. Don't go away. Take a break, please. Thank you very much. A free-for-all it is. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Jack.
Morning, sir.
Nice to catch a little glimpse of your personal life on Salt Spring Island. Look pretty healthy over there.
It is. A little bit wet at the moment.
Yes. We could talk about anything now, right?
Yeah, anything within reason, decency, and good taste.
The news, the old CPR station. Looks very beautiful inside since they've renovated and got it all fixed up for the sea bus and everything.
Mm-hmm.
You happen to have to use the washroom.
Yes, the washroom in the CPR station in downtown Vancouver is a matter of great moment. What's wrong with it?
Oh, my God, it's just atrocious. They don't even have doors on the toilets. There's three toilets in there. The middle one doesn't even have a door on it. The other two, the locks are banged off it, and the stench would just drive you right through it. For such a beautiful, renovated building, you know, so
Linda,
nice that the public really...
Brian, call Big Julie.
Yeah, right.
In Montreal and tell him to clean up his act at the CPR station in the heart of downtown Vancouver. Where did you think this is? Montreal or Ottawa?
Well, my God, they're renovating that brand new, or that big old building.
Well, maybe is that Canadian Pacific? Yes, CPR.
CPR.
Okay, we'll make a note of it.
Okay,
we'll
Jack.
perhaps send a camera crew down to investigate it.
It should do something.
Good idea. You might as well give them a little jab for
sure.
dirty toilets.
Okay, Jack.
Appalling. That's the wrong one. Go ahead, please.
Morning, Mr. Webster.
Morning, sir.
I want you to do something about the forces.
The forces? Yeah. The forces of evil, the forces of darkness, or the forces of the crown?
Canadian Armed Forces.
I didn't think we had any. Since I had Gerald Porter on, I get the impression that we don't have any armed forces. We just got some funny guys in funny green uniforms. Isn't it great to see the French sailors in town looking like military men?
Well, even the Frenchmen can look good.
That's a very good point you make, which I shall leave lying on the studio floor.
How about our own local boys? If you don't want to do the federal Canadian Armed Forces, how about the militia and the cadets?
What militia? Do we have a militia?
The units here in town, they even wear a kilt like you used to wear.
I think of them as soldiers. I don't think of them as forces. There's a difference, you know.
Do some investigating on them and help the cadets.
I'm thinking of bringing Gerald Porter back when the federal election campaign starts to do some more stuff on the atrocious state, which apparently is confirmed of the Canadian Armed Forces.
They're being kicked around all over the place. They wear a lousy uniform.
Dreadful. Dreadful. Very depressing.
Well, get some of these people that are in authority on there.
Well, all you get is nonsense. You know that. What? You don't get anything from people in authority. I'm talking about, you get a general on? Do we still have generals?
Got too many of them.
Do we have generals? Do we still call them generals?
Yep.
What would they tell you? Things in the Canadian Armed Forces have never been better. We've got the oldest fashioned equipment in the country. We're the most undermanned. You can only join in certain circumstances, and you'll go on a waiting list in certain other circumstances, and have no fear. We shall protect you from the Russians, the Americans, and the Chinese.
Listen.
It's all garbage.
The older people then. How about helping the cadets? The young kids. At least they're not roaming around the streets being bums.
Agree entirely. It's not a subject, however, which grabs me, I must confess, but I shall bear it at the back of my mind. Agreed, Brian?
Yes.
Were you in the cadets?
No.
Why not? How old are you, by the way?
32.
32?
Yeah.
Just wondered. Go ahead, please.
Mr. Webster.
Yes.
Good morning, sir.
Morning.
Sir, I'm phoning about the problem on Georgia Street. I've been here 2 weeks from Toronto, Ontario. This is the most beautiful city I've seen, and I totally agree. Clean up Georgia. Let's get them off. Really, we don't need it. We don't need it in this fair city of ours.
We ain't going to wipe out prostitution, but we can get them off the streets and stop them being an obnoxious pest.
That's right. I walked down the other night, and I got harassed by 3 hookers, and it makes me sick. Well, let's clean it up.
Thanks very much for your support.
Bye-bye.
Campbell River.
From Duncan?
Oh, Duncan. Sorry, I took the wrong one. Go ahead, please, from Duncan.
Good morning, Mr. Webster.
Morning, madam.
I just wanted to make a point about the gentleman who called earlier, and he was saying he thought prostitution cut down on the act of rape. I think that's silly, and anyone who has anything to do with rapists or who even reads the newspapers would know that rapists are sick men, and prostitution doesn't cut it down. It's not the act of sex that they're going after. It's the gratification from the way they can bring it around. Now, these men are not going to get satisfaction from going downtown Vancouver and paying for it. It's not the same thing. So let's stop the nonsense, gentlemen, about prostitution and rape. If you want prostitution, don't try and justify it by saying that it stops rape.
Ma'am, you reflect my sentiments precisely. Campbell River.
Yeah, Jack, there's another crying fisherman. What is on the...
Well, I'm certain we had every fisherman in the country who was near a television set watching the last few days, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, well, I'm a cod fisherman, though. This is the guys that unheard of, never get heard from.
Well, now, you just go out there off the shores and catch all the cod you want, don't you?
No, we can't.
Good cod. I thought you could catch all the cod you want.
No, last December, the fisheries found out that they're going to close the Gulf down for another two months, and they didn't tell us till 2 days before the darn season opened. Like we always open the 1st of March, and end up that here we got another 2 months we got to lay around.
I want to ask you a question. Do we have runs of cod?
No, there's no runs.
They're always there.
They're not always there. They migrate too.
They migrate? Yeah. And they gave you 1 day's notice to close down the cod fishery?
2 days they put a posting up. Yet knew in 1st of December that they were going to close it.
How much can you make in a good season catching cod?
Well, you can run anywhere from 12 to 20,000 if you're a good fisherman.
What would you have told LeBlanc yesterday? Leave it open all year round?
No, I'm not for leaving it open all year round, because there's a spawning season between January and February. And I've fished cod since I was a kid, which is about 50 years. And all of a sudden we get this thrown right at us. And I missed Mr. LeBlanc yesterday. And so I mean, it's utterly stupid as far as I'm concerned.
Anyway, I'm much obliged. Now we know a little bit about cod. You can catch him the next time he's on the program. Webster and Coxford, as a matter of fact, after this break. Don't forget, UBC open house is on today and tomorrow, but here is Gail Smith from the Department of Animal Sciences who wants to say something. Yes, Gail?
Yes. The tours are not going to the dairy barn. There will be some animals at the H.R. McMillan building.
But not through the dairy barn?
No, not through the dairy barn.
You don't want to upset the coos?
No, that's right.
Anyway, they'll see some animals out there if they want to go.
Oh, yes, there'll be sheep and calf, and there'll be a wildlife display in the building.
It's the wildlife among the faculty and students that worries me most, Gail, but thanks very much. I hope you get lots of visitors. Wildlife, that was a joke. Where am I? Go ahead, please.
Hi, Jack.
Yeah.
Hey, on that Lotto Canada deal.
Yeah.
Everybody seems to be losing sight of the fact that lottery was started up to bail out friend Drapeau. And you had Campanola on there. And here she is dishing out the goodies here and there. But that's all window dressing.
Well, they've got a good answer to that. It took so many $100 million, now it's being graded down into an equal share among the provinces. Sometime this year that the contributions to the deficit of the Olympics ceases.
Well, the fine words of Pierre. Nothing would ever be given from the federal government other than what they gave.
That's correct. But they've finally given them several hundred millions of lotto money. I'm well aware of it, sir, and use it to buttress your political opinions. Go ahead, please.
Yes, Mr. Webster, I'm wondering if you're aware of the government just increasing the hospital budgets by 5%?
Ma'am, we've done not one but two programs on the subject. We've had the Hospital Employees Union on. We did a piece in Shaughnessy Hospital. We've touched other hospitals. We're well aware of what's happening.
I'm wondering if there is anything we could do other than write McClellan.
No, there is nothing you can do. It's a financial decision of the Social Credit Government. Some people, including myself, think that there's got to be some restriction on unlimited expenditures by hospital administrators.
Oh, I believe that too, but cutting back on hospital staff
Well, ma'am, we've gone over it in great depth and we'll be doing it again, but it's hardly capable of a short comment at this moment. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Mr. Webster.
Yes, sir.
I have a dilemma.
You have a dilemma.
I am going to put it to you.
Going to put it to me.
And I go to Manpower. I'm overqualified for many jobs.
Won't they let you down qualify for other jobs?
I'm overqualified, and they have told me that I should lie about my qualifications. I have a BSc in chemistry, physics, and mathematics. Now, it's an awkward situation in that principals are involved. I'm not prepared to lie, and therefore I stay out of work.
Well, I would lie for survival. I would shade my qualifications for sheer survival. I got to tell you that.
Well, shaming oneself, one has to live with oneself, and this is rather difficult. So
supposing I wasn't as good a broadcaster tomorrow as I might have been yesterday. Supposing I couldn't make it as a broadcaster tomorrow. And supposing I could make it, say, as a button pusher. I'd be quite happy to say, hey, I'm a jolly good button pusher. Or, I mean, Fred here, on the floor director. I can wave my hands as well as he can wave his hands. I make more money than Fred does. So Fred is the expert at this. And if I know enough when I finish here, I'll come back as a floor director. Because it's an easier life.
Well,
all he's got to have is 10 fingers. That's the only qualifications needed. Give us a shot of Fred's fingers.
According to...
Give us a shot of Fred's fingers. Start again at 10. Start again at 10. 10, 9, just a minute, caller. 8, 7, 6, 5. No, you cheated, Fred. Take the break. He normally uses 2 hands. Take the break. I'll talk this guy off the air. Thank goodness it's Friday. Hey, Linda?
Right.
Monday.
Monday, Erwin Swangard will be here and we'll be talking about the multiplex.
We have to attempt to understand it. Yeah. Do you know all about the multiplex?
Trying.
It's difficult, isn't it? Busy week ahead next week for Brian, Linda, Webster, and the rest of the Webster crew. See you Monday morning at 9 a.m. precisely.
I think you'd like to have people believe that you eat your young for breakfast, you go out and cut down 9 trees and beat up on your grandmother. You really would like people to believe that you're a tough old hard-nosed, wouldn't you?
Go on, Gil.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Don't be shy.
And you're not really, are you?
Marshmallow. All the way.
Go on, Gil.
Come on, chickens.
Are you finding people in television understand the news business as well as you thought?
Don't ask me to bite the hand that feeds me.
No, there must, I mean, as a general rule, are they up to the standard you thought they might be? Or?
Well, they're up to the standard I thought they might be.
We've got some of the Eastern Media Mafia in the studio this morning from a program largely unknown in the West called W5. I'll let you know if and when we allow them to put any of the Webster show on W5. I'll be back tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. precisely. Another day, another dollar.
Don't have to sing, just doodly do it. I love it so. Wherever I go, W5 and you.